Genesis 44 is a continuation of the story of Joseph and his brothers in Egypt, focusing on the test Joseph gives them to reveal their true character. Before we start, we'd like to ask for your support. If you enjoy our video, please hit the like button. This will help us reach more people and create content for you. Now let's get started with today's video. Genesis 44, Joseph's final test of his brothers. Genesis 4:4 is one of the most significant chapters in the story of Joseph, serving as a dramatic turning point in his relationship with his brothers. It presents a deeply emotional and complex narrative where Joseph, still in disguise as the governor of Egypt, tests his brothers to see whether they have changed since the time they sold him into slavery. Joseph devises a final plan to observe their integrity, loyalty, and their regard for their youngest brother, Benjamin. The chapter is rich with themes of guilt, repentance, sacrifice, and family loyalty. In this detailed overview, we will explore the events of Genesis 44 and their theological and emotional implications. Joseph's plan, a hidden cup, Genesis 44 verses 1 to 5. After Joseph's brothers had come to Egypt to buy grain during the famine, Joseph recognized them, though they did not recognize him. Joseph had already tested them once by accusing them of being spies, which resulted in their return to Canaan to bring back their youngest brother, Benjamin, as proof of their honesty. Now that Benjamin had arrived, Joseph decided to put them through another test. In the opening verses of Genesis 44, Joseph instructed his steward to secretly place his silver cup in Benjamin's grain sack. This cup was a symbol of Joseph's authority and was presumably used for divination or special purposes in Egyptian culture. After filling their sacks with grain, Joseph's brothers were allowed to leave for home. However, shortly after they set off, Joseph sent his steward to confront them. The steward caught up with them and accused them of stealing Joseph's silver cup, a grave offense. He relayed Joseph's words, "Why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the cup from which my master drinks, and by which he indeed practices divination? You have done wrong in doing this." Genesis 44 verses 4 to 5. This accusation was a test designed by Joseph to see how the brothers would react when faced with a situation that could endanger Benjamin, the new favored son of their father, Jacob. Would they abandon Benjamin as they once abandoned Joseph? The brothers' defense, confidence in their innocence, Genesis 44 verses 6 to 10. The brothers were shocked by the accusation. In their minds, they had done nothing wrong, and they could not imagine why anyone would suspect them of theft. They felt confident enough in their innocence to make a bold offer. They replied, "Why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves." Genesis 44 verses 7 to 9. The brothers' response demonstrated their belief in their own integrity and the fairness of the Egyptian officials. They thought that the steward was mistaken, and they were willing to make a severe offer to prove their honesty. However, the steward softened their terms, saying that only the one found with the cup would become a slave, while the others would be allowed to go free. This was part of Joseph's plan to isolate Benjamin and see whether his brothers would abandon him to save themselves, as they once did to Joseph. The cup is found in Benjamin's sack, Genesis 44 verses 11 to 13. The steward began searching the brothers' sacks, starting with the oldest, Reuben, and moving down to the youngest, Benjamin. When the steward finally opened Benjamin's sack, the silver cup was found inside. The brothers were devastated by this discovery. They had promised their father, Jacob, that they would return Benjamin safely, and now it seemed that they had failed. In ancient Near Eastern culture, tearing one's clothes was a sign of extreme grief or distress, and the brothers tore their clothes as a sign of their despair. They loaded their donkeys and returned to the city, determined to confront the governor, Joseph, and plead for Benjamin's release. Judah's leadership and plea for mercy, Genesis 44 verses 14 to 17. When the brothers arrived back at Joseph's house, they threw themselves on the ground before him, symbolizing their submission and desperation. Joseph, still hiding his true identity, asked them why they had stolen the cup and said, "Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination?" Genesis 44 verse 15. This statement added to Joseph's aura of authority and mystery, although it is unclear whether Joseph actually practiced divination or if this was simply part of the ruse. Judah, who had taken a leadership role among the brothers since their return to Egypt, responded by acknowledging their guilt. He said, "What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also in whose hand the cup has been found." Genesis 44 verse 16. Judah's words reveal a deep sense of guilt, though not for the theft of the cup, which they had not committed. Instead, Judah seemed to be referring to their past sins, particularly their treatment of Joseph many years earlier. Judah's confession that God has found out the guilt suggests that the brothers saw their current predicament as divine punishment for their past wrongs. However, Joseph refused to punish all the brothers. He insisted that only the one who had the cup, Benjamin, would remain as a slave, while the rest could return home in peace. This decision put the brothers in a difficult position. Would they abandon Benjamin and return to their father without him, as they had once done with Joseph? Or had they truly changed? Judah's emotional appeal, offering himself as a substitute, Genesis 44 verses 18 to 34. At this point, Judah stepped forward and made one of the most moving speeches in the Bible. His appeal to Joseph was a masterful blend of humility, desperation, and sacrificial love. Judah began by pleading for Joseph's patience and understanding, saying, "Please, my Lord, let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself." Genesis 44 verse 18. Judah recognized Joseph's power and authority but hoped to appeal to his sense of compassion. Judah then recounted the entire story of their family, explaining how their father, Jacob, had already lost one son, Joseph, and how Benjamin was now the only remaining son of Jacob's beloved wife, Rachel. He described how deeply their father loved Benjamin and how Jacob had been reluctant to let him go to Egypt. Judah emphasized that if Benjamin did not return, it would bring their father to the grave in sorrow. Judah's speech reaches its emotional climax when he offers himself as a substitute for Benjamin. He says, "Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father." Genesis 44 verses 33 to 34. This is a profound moment of character development for Judah. Years earlier, Judah had been the one who suggested selling Joseph into slavery, but now he was willing to offer himself as a slave to save his brother Benjamin. This act of self-sacrifice demonstrated that the brothers, particularly Judah, had changed. They were no longer motivated by jealousy or selfishness but by love and loyalty to their family. Theological and moral implications. Genesis 44 reveals several important theological and moral lessons. Repentance and transformation. The brothers' actions in this chapter show that they have undergone a significant transformation. Their guilt over what they did to Joseph has haunted them for years, and now they are faced with a similar situation where they must choose between self-preservation and protecting their brother. Judah's willingness to sacrifice himself for Benjamin is evidence that he and his brothers have truly repented of their past sins. God's providence and justice. Joseph's words to his brothers earlier in the story, that their actions were part of God's plan to save lives, suggest that God had a greater purpose in allowing Joseph to be sold into slavery. In Genesis 44, the brothers interpret their misfortunes as divine justice for their past wrongdoing. The unfolding events are part of God's providential plan to bring reconciliation to the family and fulfill his promises to Abraham's descendants. Family loyalty and sacrificial love. Judah's speech is one of the most powerful examples of sacrificial love in the Bible. He is willing to become a slave in order to spare his brother and his father from suffering. This act foreshadows the concept of substitutionary sacrifice, which is later fully realized in the New Testament through Jesus Christ's sacrificial death on behalf of humanity. Forgiveness and reconciliation. Although Joseph has not yet revealed his true identity, the events of this chapter pave the way for the reconciliation that will occur in the next chapter. Joseph's tests are not meant to punish his brothers but to bring about repentance and reconciliation. The story shows that forgiveness and reconciliation are possible even after the most grievous wrongs, but they require true repentance and a change of heart. Conclusion. Genesis 44 is a pivotal chapter in the story of Joseph and his brothers, as it highlights the themes of guilt, repentance, sacrifice, and reconciliation. Judah's selfless offer to take Benjamin's place as a slave demonstrates the profound change that has taken place in the hearts of Joseph's brothers. This chapter sets the stage for the emotional climax of the story, where Joseph will finally reveal his true identity and reunite with his family. Please subscribe my YouTube channel. I hope you like this video. Thank you.